Legislative Chair for the Washington Recreation and Parks Association. And we're really glad that you're able to join us today for this great Outdoors Day preview as we talk with some of our senators about the capital budget. So please note that we are recording today. We really want to thank you as well as our senators for making time for this important discussion as we are already well into the first session, but we know that there's a lot of important decisions yet to be made ahead. So this is just a great opportunity. We appreciate having this chance to talk about the capital budget and also some perspectives on important legislation that is before the legislature this session. So we'd ask that you use the chat button or the chat function in order to write if you have questions that are coming up. My main job is just to help us flow through the agenda this morning. So I'll keep an eye on that and we'll take some questions for specific senators as we go through the agenda, and then we'll cover some of the things that we don't get to right away as we spend some time together at the end. So we look forward to hearing from you as participants about the questions that are most important to you. So just a little bit of an overview. We're going to start with some comments by the president from WRPA, Paul Simmons, as well as Christine Mahler, the executive director from the Washington Wildlife and Recreation Coalition. And then we have Senators Frocht, Mullet, and Schessler who have joined us this morning and are going to speak to the capital budget. We also have Senator Warnock who will talk about some specific capital budget allocations before we spend a little bit of time with Senator Nobles to talk about a Park RX bill. And then anything else that we have additional time as the hour, I'm sure will go quickly. So with that, I will turn it over to Paul Simmons for his opening comments. Paul?
All right, thanks so much, Roxanne. And, I'll start by acknowledging that we're grateful to have such awesome partners in the WWRC. And thank you for co-hosting alongside us this morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Simmons. I'm the current president of the Washington Recreation and Parks Association and also the director of Olympia Parks, Arts, and Recreation. Just want to take just a second and set the stage. As parks and recreation professionals, we've never been more aware of how instrumental nature, outdoor recreation, and social connections are to our quality of life. We provide access to spaces and places where people can reflect and re-energize, where everyone is welcome regardless of age or social or economic status, and where a sense of community is always created. All necessary foundations for good mental health. Parks and public spaces were cherished and utilized over the last year like never before, and the increasing demand on our system came at a time when resources to manage the system were not only threatened but dramatically diminished. This is not new. Many of our parks and recreation systems were slow to return to full service after the financial decline of 2008, yet use grew exponentially for most providers between 2014 and 2019. And then in 2020, as the world shut down, our trails and parks saw record-breaking use continue to grow. The COVID-19 pandemic has both taught and reinforced important lessons for Washingtonians. We've gained a newfound appreciation of the critical role that parks and public health plays in our society. And we've seen tremendous value that people place on having local parks and trails and open spaces close to home. The pandemic has also highlighted and elevated our understanding of the inequities in access and quality of park systems across the state. Many park systems entered 2020 with major maintenance and operation backlogs before COVID-19 and are experiencing exacerbated funding deficits since then. Depending on the funding structure of the park system, cities and park districts are being forced to reduce access and services due to reductions in their single source of earned revenues. And such issues are of pro-rationing as well for some of our park districts. Parks and recreation is much more than fun and games. We provide critical support for youth development and senior services. We promote preventative and restoration, and we promote preventative and restorative physical and mental health, and we boost travel and tourism in the economy in our communities. Local parks are an equal access destination and experience for all segments of our society, regardless of income, race, religion, or sexual orientation. When you look at local parks through a social justice and equity lens, they shine brightly. And support for capital reinvestment and maintenance and operations can ensure more parks and trails are being built and maintained in high-need communities. The positive attributes of local parks, combined with the challenges that go with maintaining and preserving them, help form the foundation for WRPA's 2021 legislative agenda priorities, which are centered around COVID-19 recovery, equity, and ways to restore the economic health and social vitality of all Washington communities. We have some key legislative priorities that we want to thank our senators for being on the call today and the support that they've already shown in this direction. The first that I want to highlight is our local parks funding option, which is Senate Bill 5006. Not all park systems have access to the same voter-approved funding tools. And Senate Bill 5006 is a 0.1% sales tax and excuse me, this Monday morning, a 0.1 cent sales tax option subject to voter approval that will provide an opportunity to change that. It'll give our local communities the opportunity and the option to increase their investment in their local park systems. We're so grateful for the governor's $100 million that he's allocated towards the WWRP. And we're also grateful for the $11.2 million for YAF and the $9.1 million for the ALEA account. Given the state's population growth and the economic and public health values of the great outdoors, please consider increasing WWRP to $140 million. We're very excited about a new item on our agenda, which is a $200,000 capital budget allocation for a statewide multimodal trails database. Right now, all of our local communities, our GIS systems don't always talk to each other, which doesn't create a landscape for great planning when it comes to trails. Yet we know that these trails are seeing some of the highest use in history. And now is the great time to be better coordinated. And we think that this bill and this investment will help us get there. We also have Senate Bill 5292, our Parks RX legislation, and thank you, Senator Nobles, for helping with this. This legislation would set up a collaborative process whereby local parks and recreation professionals and the public health representatives and the healthcare insurance sectors can all work together to prescribe parks and recreation activities and destinations as part of preventative healthcare. Sorry, I'm kind of fumbling my way through a little bit. It is Monday morning at 8 a.m. My daughter goes back to school this morning. I'm gonna set the script aside and just go off the cuff for a minute because I probably should have done that from the start. Thank you so much, senators, for being here this morning. Parks are everything. They are economic development. They are equity. They are the economy. They are health. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate your support, and I'm going to kick it over to Christine and let her take it from here. So thanks so much, and good morning, everyone. Looking forward to not only today, but also a great day on Thursday as well for Great Outdoors Day.
Paul. Yeah, Christine.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Roxanne. I definitely sympathize with the Monday morning at 8 a.m. as I'm sure all of our guests today can. It's always a tough time. But thank you so much to our partners at WRPA for not only our partnership in the Parks and Great Outdoors Legislative Day or Legislative Week, however we want to bill it this year, but also for your partnership throughout the year. We quite literally couldn't do what we do without our great partners on the ground in the parks departments. Thank you as well to all of the senators who are joining us today and for their great support for the great outdoors in years past. We know that the outdoors is an important part of our life here in Washington, and we really appreciate how much you prioritize that for your constituents. I'll be pretty brief today so that we can get to our senators, but as Paul noted, the response to the COVID-19 pandemic created a surge in demand for outdoor recreation across the state. And it's really a good forecast of what we can expect every year in the near future with our growing population. We must invest now if we hope to meet the growing demands in the future. This is the case for critical close to home opportunities like local parks, as well as for destination recreation opportunities. Not only that, but our environment is also in crisis. Habitat lands are facing increasing pressure and impacts from climate change, from the threat of wildfire and drought to water rise and more. That's the beauty of the WWRP. It addresses all of this at once, and that's why we're asking the coalition is asking the legislature to step up from the governor's $100 million, which we really do appreciate, and asking for $140 million for the WWRP this year, which will fund outdoor recreation and conservation projects all across the state, boosting our economy and growing our state. We also want to acknowledge that there is a need for increased equity. And while the WWRP has always made strides towards equity, we do believe that there are improvements that can be found, and we welcome the opportunity to participate in an in-depth review of the WWRP and other outdoor recreation grant programs to help ensure that these programs are serving all Washingtonians better going forward. And then I also just wanted to put in a plug. We are also supporting several of the programs that Paul mentioned, as well as No Child Left Inside, PILT reforms, which I know Senator Warnick will be talking about in a little bit, as well as some community forest grant programs. So really appreciate the senators joining us here today and taking the time on a Monday morning, bright and early. So that's all I have. Back over to you, Roxanne.
Great. Thank you, Christine. And would love now to hear from Senator Frock, who is the Ways and Means Capital Budget Chair, as well as the Deputy Chair, Senator Mullet. So turning it over to you for your remarks for us that we'd love to hear from you this morning.
Well, good morning. Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay? Everybody,
Yes.
I see Senator Mullet nodding his head, so I know I'm doing it.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having us. It's great to be here. And I know there's some of my colleagues are on the phone. I think I saw Senator Schessler is on the phone, who will be working with us this year on the capital budget. And I know we're going to have some others as well. I want to thank you for putting this together. This is always one of my favorite lobby days, if you will, when we're actually together in Olympia. We usually come in and spend a few minutes talking to you, usually in the Lieutenant Governor's big conference room, as I recall. And I know how important this is to so many people. I guess what I wanted to sort of start off with is that our recreation opportunities, our recreation activities have been, during the pandemic, a lifeline to so many people, including myself and my family. And one of the best days I had during this entire period, and it's been tough with my kids, all of us at home, all together almost for a year now, entirely, was a day that we spent hiking around Deception Pass and enjoying all that it has to offer. And I know that there's so many people that have been able to do that. And I think we're poised once we get through and get the vaccine distributed. And I do feel like things are starting to look up. The numbers are going down. We're going to get over this hump fairly. I don't know how soon it's going to be, but I think it's going to be soon enough. And I think things are really going to open up, and our state's going to really blossom again and reopen the way that it should. And we know that outdoor activities is a way back for us, because one of the things that's fallen off most dramatically is our tourism and hospitality industry. And it is precisely because of our investment over the last 25 or 30 years in parks and recreation activities and all that WWRP supports, that we have built a dynamic tourism economy, if you will, and all of that has shut down. And so we know we have to be intentional in our efforts to restart that. And in my view, a really strong investment in WWRP is going to be really, really vital this year. I'm proud of what we've done in the last few years. I think I guess it's in the last 5 or 6 years, about the last 5 years I've been involved in the capital budget. Our investment in WWRP programs has ramped up. Last year we were in the 85 million range. I think the cycle before that we were up a little bit above that, but all in all, it's been a really, really significant investment. The governor this year made a very strong investment of 100 million, and he did some other things in the capital budget to try to enhance our economic recovery. And we're looking really closely at that. We have to make sure that we do this as we're doing the capital budget, that we do this in a fiscally responsible way. We don't want to rob from the future in such a way. We want to be smart in how we invest now to get things going again, but we also want to make sure that we don't inhibit what we can do in the future as new projects like for the WWRP come online. And finally, I'll just say that I think you're going to see support for some of the programs you just mentioned. I'm very interested in the community forest program that you mentioned, Christine, at the very end. I think that's a really, really innovative way to preserve forest land and allow communities that want to buy in to do it. We tried to get that done a couple of years ago with the Wenatchee project, and it needed a little bit of more work. And my understanding is that that project is on its way, and it's in a better position now. So hopefully we'll be able to proceed strongly with that. I guess really that's kind of mainly what I wanted to say. I'll turn it over to Senator Mullet and let you hear his insights, and then happy to take a few questions if we have time.
Yeah, thanks. And I'll try to keep my remarks brief so we do have time to answer questions. I usually find that's the most productive parts of these meetings. And I mean, in my district, I'm always looking for things that I can support that are bipartisan. And to me, the outdoor trails and parks is the classic definition of that. I take my dogs hiking on a very regular basis in the 5th Legislative District. I think I've done every trail between Issaquah and Snoqualmie Pass. And you see people on the trails I mean, there's just as many Republicans as are Democrats using our outdoor trails on a daily basis. And that's what I love about it. When I go back to the district and brag about the investments we've made in our parks and our trails, I get enthusiastic responses from both sides of the aisle. And I think that, you know, Senator Frock, you guys have touched on this a little, like tourism comes under the committee that I chair in the Senate. And I think there's a definite nexus as we invest in our parks and our trails and our outdoor recreation, that we try to tie this to doing a better job of promoting Washington as an outdoor recreation tourism spot. I think right now Montana beats us and Idaho beats us in kind of promoting to the rest of the country that these are places people should travel to for outdoor recreation. And I think one of our, as Senator Frock's committee that he chaired this past year really highlighted, is we try to bring tourism and hospitality back as we come out of COVID. I think this is one of the areas that if we can have a robust investment in our outdoor parks and trails, this capital budget, that we should really take advantage of that to try to leverage that to get more people to visit our state going forward. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions the folks have.
Great. Thank you both for being here. And we know, senators, that there are a lot of competing interests, right? There always are. But as has been stated, that these recreational amenities and outdoor amenities are driving both quality of life locally, as well as this tourism industry. And there's more employees in the outdoor recreation tourism industry than some of the other things that the Puget Sound is known for as well. So with that kind of understanding, as you go into the sessions, do you feel that the levels being asked for are going to be seen as a big recovery investment in some of our key industries? Or how do you see that playing out, and how can we help you in that?
Well, Senator Frock, you can go first.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. I think that the first thing I want to say is that things are not great in terms of our overall state budget, but they are not as bad as they could have been, or that I thought they might have been back when all of this started almost a year ago. I mean, I was sending around an email to some of my colleagues last night saying, you know, when it's February of last year, we were about to, within a month, we were going to adjourn. We thought with one of the strongest budget situations we'd had in recent memory, with extensive surpluses, been able to make some really critical investments that we felt were needed in healthcare and other spaces as well. And everything changed around February 28th and March 1st of last year. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't think we'd be in the situation we're in today. That said, we went way off the cliff last spring, and the economy came back some as we had a somewhat of a reopening in the summer and fall. And then we went back into a situation, as states around the country have found, of really critical COVID danger in the late fall through Christmas and New Year's, and we're starting to come off of that again. So it hasn't been an even thing. It's been up and down, and the budget, I think, has reflected that. But I would say with the federal help, it's not as bad as it could have been. There's still some things we need to do. the point of all that is that we felt going in that our budget, our capital budget, was going to be pretty close to what we were able to do in the last 2-year cycle. And then with what Governor Inslee has proposed, which is an aggressive play on the capital budget, that gives us more opportunity to lean into some of these recovery investments, if you will. And so in my mind, I think that we should do that. We need to push it as much as the system can bear. I mean, one thing that is always important, and this is, in this time of a new year and a new beginning politically, nationally, the capital budget is one where we have to have bipartisan support. We don't have all Democrats can do one thing. We have to get our Republican colleagues to work with us. And when they were in control, they had to get us to work with them. Everybody has to, because of the 60% threshold, to pay for this stuff. So we've got to take everybody's considerations into account. And I think that's kind of the challenge, is how do we get that approach just right to make it work, that everybody's comfortable with what we're doing, and we're also doing it in a smart, fiscally responsible way.
And I think from my experience in the time I've done the capital budget, this is the first time there hasn't been what we would call like a book one budget from the governor, where it's like, here's the state debt model, which the state debt model came into the session saying we could borrow 3.3 billion in bonds. So normally he would do a budget based on the state debt model, and then a budget that was like, well, if we can get additional revenue, this time around, he just did a budget off 4.8 billion, which was significantly higher, obviously, in the state debt model. It's been very challenging the first few weeks of session as we've gone through the capital budget, because I think Senator Schechler, Senator Honeyford, Senator Frock, and myself have agreed we want to do more than the traditional state debt model. But we're also being realistic that, as Senator Frock pointed out, we don't want to decimate future capital budgets. Like, we don't want to show up 2 years from now and not be able to make any investments. And so we're trying to find that balance, which the reality is that'll be a number probably somewhere in the middle between what the state debt model was and what the governor's budget issued. And that would still be the largest capital budget in the history of the state of Washington. I mean, even if we only get halfway between those numbers, that's a substantial investment. I think it will help with economic recovery. That definitely means we have to prioritize as we go through. But I mean, I think your group makes a strong case for being on that list of priority investments.
Thank you, senators. I think in addition to a strong sense of appreciation and support for you that I'm seeing in the chat box, I think with some of that conversation about the balance, that even though tourism might be down, that local uses is up. I know for ourselves here in Pierce County that I had 1 million more uses on my trail, right? As soon as the stay home, stay local happened, we were a space we quite literally could not keep people out of. But I think that also puts more emphasis, I think, on the whole reinvesting in our system, not just for the local use, but to be able to keep improving our assets so that as the tourism industry comes back, we have redesigned and reinvested in our key locations that are having tournaments. But I think also now we have an eye towards, with YAF and ALEA and some of the things that we're doing, how do we not only preserve that asset for local and tourism, but make it safer to use? I think design is going to move forward, and to have these large scale capital investments allow us to move much more quickly on our new reality, right? Post-COVID, knowing that we have this capital funding to immediately make some of those changes to bring things back more safely, more quickly. And we can do that together, most definitely. Right. Any final comments that you all have before we move over to Senator Schechler?
Yeah, I'll just briefly end and say, I think you make a great point. The last one you just made, Roxanne, about like other programs as well. I know ALEA in my own district, we were able to stand that up a few years ago, and it's really helped with some waterfront access, and just exactly the kind of investment you pointed out is really needed. The last thing I'll say is, we lost a champion in Governor Lowry this year. And I think the last WWRP breakfast I went to was where both he and Governor Evans were speaking. It was really a testament to their vision for how this is supposed to go. And so we've got to maintain the legacy of him and of Governor Evans and of the work they've done together. And I think we'll definitely be trying to do that.
Great.
And I think my part of remarks is I will say, I really appreciate when we have ranked prioritized lists in the capital budget. Like, when it comes to like youth athletic facilities, the WWRP projects, like the fact that you have groups who spend an entire 1 or 2 years vetting projects, making sure the ones who are going to have the biggest impact get prioritized. I mean, this is the most efficient way to build a capital budget. If we didn't have groups like this doing prioritized lists, it would just basically be in a free-for-all of us saying our project's most important. And so I think if we want to encourage that kind of behavior, it's our job in the capital budget to really try to send a message. When groups do a good job of having a prioritized list and vetting projects, we want to get money out the door and not have it sit on a shelf. We want to get money out the door and have it actually go to work. And when we come back 2 years later, have something to show for it. And I think the more, so I think that the hope is, in my mind, every capital budget cycle, we try to send the message that the groups who do a good job of creating these vetted prioritized lists are going to get treated well in the state capital budget.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. And I think what's really great, when you can look at those lists, you can also see how many districts are represented, large and small communities, with the process that RCO has put together, that you see the impact and, some of those equity issues of making sure that communities across the state are benefiting. Again, thank you both so much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Senator Schessler, take it away.
That's right. Senator Mark Schessler, our Senate Ways and Means Assistant Ranking Member for Capital Budget. It's all yours.
Well, thank you very much. Having been around a very long time, I've been a part of capital budget development in the House, in the Senate. As I look at going into this, I can honestly say that if I was going to pick 2 people from across the aisle to work with, these are the 2 I would have personally picked. We can find areas to agree. We can work civilly. It's very, very nice. I think they did a wonderful job of explaining the capital budget and bonding in general. I would have to say that what the governor proposed is almost certainly unsustainable as a bonding level, but we also find ways that we can agree to do a little better. But certainly borrowing $1.5 billion from next biennium just really isn't something I see happening, but there are adjustments that can and should be made. We have a history of projects that benefit all segments of the state. I know Senator just mentioned Aaliyah and what it does for him. What it's done for parks and other areas are important to myself and others. We also have to be careful to say that everything is economic development, because it isn't. Good investments, but some stimulate our economy more than others. So we're proceeding along, we're developing the budget, we're working hard together. One of the things that, since my colleagues said so much so well, I would say nobody ever said a politician didn't talk long enough, so I'm going to cut it off now. Leave it to Senator Warnick or questions.
Right. Are there any questions for Senator Schessler before we move on? I think you were present during some of the other discussion. I don't really see any new questions come up, but we appreciate you raising some of those points, and we definitely understand, on this side that it is a unique year, it's a challenging year, and yet it's the same sense that there's always competing interest, and you have to find the balance in that, in a way to take care of today that doesn't harm tomorrow moving forward. Maybe if you wouldn't mind speaking a little bit more about Aaliyah and some of the programs that you have seen benefit your district, or maybe have some broader statewide benefit. We always focus a strong degree on the RCO, on the grant programs that RCO administers, but there's quite a bit of legislation that crosses climate and also crosses other areas that are kind of equally important as you're looking for this balance.
Well, you learn a lot about your state when you work on capital budget because they all have priorities, benefit in different ways. My legislative district is the third larger than the state of Connecticut.
Yeah.
So what's important might be Palouse Falls in one area. It might be a local park in another because it is that large. I think one of the things that is really important to rural Washington is the PILT bills that Senator Warnick has introduced, because acquiring lands for conservation purposes, recreation purposes is established. The problem is these rural counties can't afford to go without the property tax revenue that a fair system generates. And when you get into some counties where the majority of the land is in state and federal ownership, you just can't do without fair reimbursement. So there's things that complement this program very nicely. I think Senator Warnick's bill on an inventory of the trails and a database makes a lot of sense. It's a one-time investment, but that one-time investment tells us how the pieces fit together. Maybe start talking to each other, that rather than do random acts of kindness, we do some really smart investments, because we don't lack for good ideas, but they have to mesh together well and have an end goal.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate those comments. And I think you're right. The one thing, there is so much variation in the size and scale of this important industry for the state. That's something that we've also looked at, you know, now over time. It is, how are we creating a more comprehensive whole with all the pieces? But we also, I think, have promoted the local funding options bill this year, because we realize many of the jurisdictions that have key pieces don't have all the same funding options. And for the local level, to support the capital investment that the state has been able to make over the years, we want to make sure that we are maintaining and utilizing these assets to improve really our statewide system, to maintain our statewide system, working alongside you. So thank you for your time and your commitment. And you did a fabulous segue to Senator Warnick, who can share more on the PILT legislation as well as any other aspects of the capital budget.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Senator Schessler. I was actually on to see what the capital budget chairs and Senator Schessler had to say. I kind of miss being in that room, but I left it in very good hands with Senator Schessler. As he said, he's got experience, years of experience in working on the capital budget and negotiating budgets in the past. So yes, I am honored to be able to introduce the PILT bill again. We almost made it across the finish line last year, but we have reworked it and come back with a very simple proposal this year to give the PILT payment requirements to go through the state treasurer's office. It's been not as smooth in the past as it should be, and as Senator Schessler has indicated, PILT is very, very important for rural counties that have an overabundance of public lands, and that could be state lands or federal lands. But we have many counties on our side of the mountain that people like to come visit, but sometimes the revenue just isn't there from those lands. for the counties. So PILT is very important, and that means payment in lieu of taxes, if anybody hasn't heard that in the past. But we had a good hearing. It is now in the Ways and Means Committee, and both the ranking and the chair of that committee are supportive of this bill. So we should be on our way this year. The other one that I have requested is, and Senator Shessler talked about that as well, is a budget proviso to help map the trail systems, and especially the multimodal trail systems. You know, I kind of think of, there's an old saying, if we don't know where we're going, we don't know when we get there, something along that line. And we need to know where those trails are. We need to be able to coordinate among the entities that are interested in trails. And I don't know if you've heard that we have a fantastic trail from Cle Elum to Roslyn, but have you heard about that? It's the old coal mine trail. And it's a fantastic trail that people can ride, hike, bike, and it's right along a main road in Kittitas County. But if we didn't know it was there, people couldn't take advantage of it. So it's very nice to have. It will be nice to have this this mapping system done. And I'll stop and take questions, but I have always been an outdoor recreation enthusiast. My family is. I love being outdoors, and I didn't realize how important that is until the pandemic hit. The very first calls my office started to get was, why did the governor shut down fishing? We had hundreds of complaints about not being able to go out and go fishing. I understand the governor was just like us, working his way through this to try to figure out what to do to help keep people safe. But taking away fishing was not one of those. And so he did open that up very quickly after lots of consultation with Fish and Wildlife. And I am so glad he did, because people were not ready to give up their fishing. And that includes hiking to fishing spots and just being outdoors with their families. So we have lots of fishing, believe it or not, in our area, in Grant County area. We have a lot of seep lakes, irrigation seep lakes that have been stocked with fish and other streams. But so we're in the desert, but lots of fishing going on. So just that was one light bulb moment that, oh wow, this is really important to people. There's a question in here I just saw pop up from Jeff Chapman. Yeah, if they have a good fence on the Beverly Bridge, I'll probably ride my horse across that. It's going to be a little bit tall, I think, but I've done it before, so I will ride. Might lead the horse at first, but I'll have to take a look at it. But I've done that before. I've ridden horses across pretty tall bridges up there in the mountains, and you know, that's my favorite mode of transportation out there. So we're going to make it. We're going to make it happen. So be glad to answer any questions that you have. And I really enjoyed listening to Senators Mullet, Fracht, and Shessler, and I think capital budget is in good hands this year. So be open for questions.
Excellent, thank you. Just a reminder to folks, go ahead and drop your questions in the chat. But I think one of the things, especially since you are, you know, one of the leads on this multimodal trail database, as you mentioned, trails, I think, are just a huge priority and asset in any community. Mm-hmm. But when you have, we're seeing more and more, and I think the database maybe being less about the end users trying to find a place to go and more about what's all connecting to the Cascade to Palouse Trail, right? What is all, how do we connect other regional trail systems to the Olympic trail system? And that it truly is both transportation as well as recreation. And have you been in conversations that are looking at recreational trails that have this connection capacity fitting more in the view of active transportation or being eligible for transportation funding?
You know, that is an idea that I haven't pursued, but it certainly is something that we need to be aware of, because people need to get to the trailheads. And if we can do something along that line, showing where transportation might be an option, especially public transportation, I think that's going to be even better, especially for those folks who, who maybe are a little bit more homebound than others, or who don't drive on a regular basis. I think this would be an excellent opportunity to have a conversation. So,
yeah, great. Well, and thank you for recognizing that the database itself is a crucial key step to being able to have those things out.
Yeah. So, yeah. Kind of looking at these. I know there's a question I'm going to follow up later, because it's a project that I haven't heard much about, and it's I believe in my district, so I'm going to follow up with the person later. So work is not done. There's always work to be done for outdoor recreation. So
yeah,
I see Senator Nobles is on, so I will turn it over to her. So thank you very much for inviting us this morning. I wish I was in the room with you having donuts and coffee, but next year for sure.
For sure. Thank you, Senator Warnick.
All right, thank you.
And with that, we will turn to Senator Noble so she can talk to us about Senate Bill 5292, the Parks RX bill.
Thank you. Good morning to each of you. Thanks for having me. And good morning, Senator Warnick. I am excited about our Parks RX bill and the opportunity, I think, one, to pilot a program and take a step where we can try to bring together different industries and agree, hopefully, that it is critically important to get more community members in our parks and outdoors in a prescribed way. And I'm just really excited, again, to be able to lead this effort, to be able to champion this effort. My heart behind this is environmental justice as well as health, making sure that we're focusing on health equity and just trying to be as innovative as possible as we think about how to make our community healthier. And I think this is an option, but the pilot will allow us to have those critical conversations, will allow community groups, insurers, parks and rec departments, folks who care about the outdoors and care about the health of our communities, to come together and figure out how we can expand this and provide access to our parks across, for me, Pierce County and the state of Washington. But this is a wonderful model and opportunity that we'd love to see expanded across the nation, but we'll start right here at home. So I'm just excited mainly about the opportunity and potential to do this, and hopefully all of you on the call will, testify, will show your support, will be behind it, and will help us to launch this pilot as smoothly as possible.
Great, thank you, Senator. I think the concept or the model that you're talking about isn't necessarily new in that there's silver seekers. There's other programs out there that have recognized that if health insurers are investing in the preventative side, then there's long-term and economic benefits at the other end. So since that's been happening a little bit and in different places of the nation, how do you see this bill maybe helping to transform Washington and the way we approach health, especially health with underserved communities?
Yeah, well, the most meaningful part for me at this point is being able to launch this pilot project in partnership with our local Metropolitan Parks District. I think, to me, that is the difference. I am excited about, yes, all of the ways that other models are demonstrating a similar, or in fact the same, concept, but to know that we have this opportunity here in Pierce County to work with Metro Parks, to work with our insurers, as you stated, on preventative measures, is what's different. I mean, I want to see us do better here in Pierce County, here in our community. And I'm excited for this opportunity to work with Metro Parks and with our state parks and agencies in Washington State, for this pilot. So it isn't the first of its kind, but it's an opportunity for me to engage with our local outdoors groups and agencies, to see better health outcomes here in Pierce County, which will impact what happens across the state if we're able to create legislation for more programs.
Great, thank you. And I think, right now, talking about health outcomes is so important. I think it's more top of mind maybe than people had realized before. And when those things were restricted, right? The opportunity to maintain health at a time you're trying to avoid COVID, I think we could see that contradiction. But Senator Nobles, first, welcome, right? It's your freshman term. You've come in already with an idea and some things that you'd like to accomplish. So how does this particular bill really line up with some of your passions or what you want to see happen for your constituents, which I think you've already expressed could benefit the statewide constituents as well?
Yeah, well, I want to see more people outdoors. I want to see more people have options to be able to live healthier lives. I mean, this aligns with my goals because it was important as, not just a freshman senator, but as the senator that I hope to be my entire term. I want to make sure that I am focused on environmental issues and focused on helping our community to understand the healing aspect of just being outside. And this should be a part of the way that we take care of our minds, our spirits, our bodies, by connecting with the outdoors. And to know that that I and my children and other community members can have this experience, this opportunity prescribed really excites me. But I have ran environmental justice camps for the past 3 years. I have gotten more youth, especially Black youth and youth of color, outdoors and exploring our parks. And I'm just looking for allies and folks who are trying to help me to do that. And so if that is community groups, parks districts, our state parks, insurers, anyone who wants to be on board with providing access to a broader range of community for the sake of our health, our mental health, our spiritual health, our physical health, I want to be in partnership with those folks. So this is just directly in alignment with my priorities as a senior and who I am as a person.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think we're hearing more and more that mental health connection across the board. And you mentioned youth, so I believe the No Child Left Inside program, and really returning that program funding beyond the capital program is one that many communities have been glad to see come back. And yet it's probably the one, as soon as the door was open, the application numbers there are pretty huge, compared to the resources there. But RCO runs a good process to help find ways to prioritize those and divvy them out. But I can see your passion and support aligning with that program as well.
Yeah, so again, I ask for folks' support, testimony, help me to get our community outdoors, help us to create this partnership with insurers so that we are taking preventative steps and just opening access and opportunities to ways that we can stay healthy, that we can find healing, that we can live just better lifestyles. So I ask for all of your support for sure. And I'm gonna look in the chat. I know there are questions. I don't know if someone is monitoring that.
Yes. And I see that it was posted as well that the next public hearing for the Park RX is the Health and Long-Term Care Committee meeting February 5th at 8 a.m. So
yeah, that's
mentioned
Friday. Please join me. This is Doug, asked, what are my go-to state parks? Some of my most fun opportunities have been going to some of our, going to some of our national parks, taking kids to Olympic, taking kids to Mount Rainier. I went to Penrose, and let me back up. I sailed to Penrose with the University of Puget Sound, And I have to tell it how it really is. So this Black woman sailed to Penrose with University of Puget Sound, which is predominantly white, and that's where I graduated. That's where I attended undergrad and graduate school. There's no mystery there. And I brought my mentorship group, our Sisterhood in the City group, which is fairly diverse, but predominantly girls of color. We learned to sail, and this was my first outside camping trip. So we sailed to Penrose. We camped outside in tents and everything, and it was so beautiful. And those are just, I mean, those girls and I will never forget that experience and that trip. And I'm excited for us to just get through this pandemic so I can be outdoors, and I can be outdoors with my family, but I love to be outdoors with community. And really what I learned being a woman who moved here from the South, a couple of decades ago, is a lot of folks who live in this state, especially communities of color, have not explored our parks in this state, national parks or state parks. They haven't had those experiences. And so it really has been a goal of mine to create adventures, to create opportunities, whether it's our state parks or national parks, to just get outside and to sail there or kayak there or walk there, whatever we need to do. But I just want us to be outdoors and to enjoy the beauty of this state. And again, it's a different type of air when you're outside, when you are breathing, when you're with community. It's a different type of love and appreciation and reflective experience. And I want more of it for myself and my children, and I want more of it for the young people that I get to serve. And the adults, we also brought some college students with us who provided some education on the trip, but I just want more of that for everyone. And I think this bill is one way, one step to continue to open those doors to be outside, to open the doors to outdoors.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I know people really appreciated hearing from you today. Also, there's a ton of information about how people can get involved in the chat. And, there are projects, and you were on earlier about just the reinvestment and the opportunity. Just part of getting us all back to that norm and stability is access to our outdoor spaces and how powerful that can be. So thank you so much. We appreciate it.
You're
I
welcome.
do know that some of the folks wanted us to circle back on the trail issue, so I want to make sure that we do that now as well.
Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Right. So I can speak a little bit on the trail, and I don't know if Doug or Kayleen or others want to, this database is a capital request, so it's not a bill. It is in the capital budget. And as we mentioned, there actually have been a lot of individual organization trail planning initiatives and a lot of databases, even started by nonprofits, where people can find different trails. But that missing piece of having more of an official database that shows the multimodal trails and how to make priority connections across our state for tourism, identifying what are kind of crucial gaps that if we filled it, would be able to provide these community connections, as well as a alignment with the state's active transportation system. So it really is pulling those things together in one project that is going to be an important tie, especially with the timing of getting this database whole, so that it can feed into updated trails plan. It can feed into some prioritization and understanding of what we need to invest in order to really raise the bar across the state. So that's my intro to it. Is there Doug, Kayleen, Paul, any of the trail advocates that have signed on? There is a sign-on letter, so maybe Doug, you want to talk about that, because we're getting really close to releasing it.
Sure. And thanks to everybody who's been on. Just a great call and great conversation this morning. I want to add that on this $200,000 request for the statewide multimodal trails database, it's bipartisan in nature. Senator Warnick has taken a lead role on it in the Senate, and Representative Shoemake and Ramel in the House. And as Roxanne was signaling, we're really gratified. There are a lot of groups partnering on that, and we'll be getting that out to the legislative chairs and ranking members Leaf Line Coalition, Washington Bikes, Trust for Public Lands, Palouse to Cascades Trails Coalition, Washington State Trails Coalition, Washington Trails Association. So really just appreciate all the partnering on that, and also appreciate the some of the homework that Kayleen and her staff have helped us do as we researched a little bit what's going on in other states. So we hope that's something that is looked kindly upon in the capital budget, and thanks to all the members who have been putting it forth.
So Jeff, I see your question. That's it really is about what is the strength of the system. So it is not meant to exclude any property owners in that process. I think the actual criteria of what all gets mapped, and not just the trails themselves, but what do they lead to, right? How are we helping to connect the community to those recreational assets? And you're more able to bike or hike your way to a park, a regional park, or even that equestrian park or any other amenities. So it's more about making sure the resources are there at this critical point in time as the process of developing that database evolves, so that we're getting it accomplished during a critical time where we're going to need this information to move forward. Okay. Christine, can I go ahead and turn it back to you now?
Absolutely. I just wanted to take a quick moment to, first of all, thank all of the senators for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking the time during a very busy legislative session. I know it's even busier than normal with this virtual system that we have, although we're very thankful to at least have that this year. But I also wanted to thank everyone else who joined us this morning bright and early at 8 a.m. on a Monday. And those of you who are joining us later this week as part of our legislative day on Thursday, you can expect your schedules to be coming out here shortly. My team's been hard at work on those over the weekend, and we hope to get those out today or tomorrow. But before we end the call today, I did just want to invite everyone to join me in a little bit of a round of applause. Earlier on the call, the senators were calling out how great it is to have a clear ranked list of projects on the capital budget lists. And the person who's really behind those lists, Kayleen Cottingham, will be retiring later this year. Just after the legislative session. Kayleen has been the power behind the RCO for a long time, and has a great team over there, and really, does the yeoman's work on all of these projects. And I just wanted to thank her for all of her hard work. She's leaving really big shoes to fill for her successor. So thank you so much, Kayleen, for all of your hard work and your leadership. We literally couldn't do what we do without you. So round of applause for Kayleen. Well-deserved retirement.
Thank you all.
Absolutely.
We have a few more months of me being here to celebrate, but thank you.
Well, we appreciate that you have timed this with the session, right? We'll have your expertise and passion all the way through, and it's a time where things are more complex, right? It's a different way for the legislator to have to operate, but so many of these conversations started, as you heard so many say, a couple of years ago, last year's session, that we really are able to pick up and move forward. And so there's probably no better platform for us than now. And hopefully, we can be part of helping you finish strong in this process, and something we know you've planned for, and have laid the way well for whoever stands on your shoulders. All right, everyone, we have taken up our hour. I did throw in, and Christine mentioned the legislative day, which is happening on Thursday. So those groups are already being broken out. It is a unique time, so not all legislators are able to do sessions on that day, but we've heard, and I'd encourage you that, this is just one touch point. And especially as bills get past the cutoff point and things progress down the line, stay connected. keep working in partnership with our local legislators. Those who came on the call today, I think you heard really clearly how appreciative and how deeply they understand the work that we do. So that's always very encouraging to know, and hopefully you've made some connections that help you move forward. Okay. With that said, we really appreciate your time here today. This has been recorded and will be available through WRPA if you need any of the tools and talking sheets that have been put together. Most of those were compiled for Legislative Day, and there's a Google Drive that has it, but you can also reach out to myself or the folks you heard on today's call, or WRPA, WWRC directly, and we can get you some tools to help with your local conversations. Again, thank you all so much. Hope to see you on Thursday.